Some of you have probably known about this car since the day I bought it, and some of you probably just clicked on this thumbnail thinking, wow, how could somebody own a 240SX for 15 years? But this is basically the story of everything I've ever done to it since I've owned it. And I'm not claiming that this car is anything special, that it's famous or anything, like it's been in some cool drift event and has some nostalgic story behind it. Unfortunately, it's just a regular 1995 240SX. But I've owned this thing for a really long time, and now that the car has seen a lot more publicity on my YouTube channel since I've been posting so many more videos about it, there's kind of a gigantic gap of history here that was never really covered before the car is at the state that it's been in now. I'm calling it version 3 right now with this purple version that it's in, but it's probably been through like 10 iterations, and I've got my laptop here so I can kind of follow along and see the images on the screen that you all are seeing and tell the story of what exactly this thing's been through. So the car was owned by a friend of mine named Tyler, and at that time I owned this gold 535 that my dad had given me. I would go out with my buddies every once in a while and drive this car. I was just beginning to get into filmmaking, and this was a really fun car. This thing was quick, you know, it was rear-wheel drive, so I could mess around a little bit. But going out with friends and things, I never really, oh, this is a good one, get a ticket for my window tint, but I would go out with my buddies and they all had S chassis or Corollas or whatever, and we would go out and make these videos of them drifting on a private, you know, parking lot somewhere, and we were all in our 20s getting in trouble here and there, but nothing too serious. We were running like nasty scrubbed tires because, you know, that's really all we could afford for a long time, and little things here and there, some side showing I see, and my buddy's car, Emerson, was one of my best friends at the time. We pretty much hung out like every single day driving around, just making silly little videos of the cars. Got the girlfriends out there wrenching on stuff, and sometimes things didn't go to plan, but you know how it is. Drifting's always a good time. You can see here's a friend of mine, Brandon, who is driving his Corolla, and really the thing that I'm getting at is I always kind of felt left out. I didn't really have a car that I wanted to modify heavily because those 535s aren't super common, and the one I had was in great condition, and it was also my dad's car, so I couldn't really do that much to it. But here's my 240SX when I acquired it, and I said my buddy Tyler owned it. We ended up trading straight across for my 5 Series, and this is basically the car the day that I got it. You can see it's not exactly in disrepair, but it's pretty harsh. You know, it's got non-painted side skirts, the bumper wasn't matching, the fenders weren't matching. It was somebody else's project that he had basically acquired and hadn't really done much to get the ball rolling on it. So I always wanted an S chassis. It was a perfect opportunity. This thing was an automatic. It had this ugly white steering wheel. Kind of cool that it was an SE, which is nice, but those only came in like the green color in the automatics. So this car was pretty basic. You know, I'd go out with my buddies and sort of try to drift it, and I didn't realize how hard you really have to beat the crap out of a car to get it to drift. And drifting with an automatic is definitely possible, but I was not that good at it. So of course we welded the diff. Probably like a few months later that became unwelded, and kind of ruined that, had to redo it all over again. But just like every other drifter kid, I ended up falling into the same, you know, wanting to put a body kit on it like this, which definitely makes the car look a heck of a lot cooler, especially once you get that whole thing all one color. And I hated these wheels. They were like mismatched, you know, Rota grids on the front and like some nasty Motegis, and 2 out of the 4 wheels leaked air pressure. And I found this wonderful place while I was in LA called VR Wheels that I'm sure a lot of you know about, and spent a lot of my hard-earned money on some wheels. These guys are great. They build 3-piece wheels, and you can customize the offsets and the lips and everything. And it was really my introduction to having my first ever real 3-piece wheel, and I ended up buying some work equips. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of photos of some of this older stuff, but the work equips were great. They were very, very wide though for a car with stock body. So I put the whole body kit on, and I really wanted a red 240SX, but I felt like so many people already had red S14s. I felt like it was a really common color for an S14. So, you know, I decided to go with a matte white, which was a mistake because that matte white, it looked really cool when it was brand new, but these wheels rubbed pretty bad. You can see how much poke they've got. It ruined the wrap pretty quick, and Also, this white being matte finish, it just got so many fingerprints. It was so hard to keep clean. It just wasn't going like I planned. And the car looks really cool here in white. It looks really nice. But you can see I got this Vertex knockoff eBay body kit, was pretty sick. And I shaved the turn signals, and that was kind of like my learning introduction into working with fiberglass, which was really fun, and learning about how many things you could do with it. So I ended up going back to VR, and I pretty much fell in love with these Weds Bazareas. These are probably one of my favorite wheels made of all time, and these were in pretty good condition back then. These wheels had a nice chrome finish on them, you can see. Slapped those on the car. So my work equips, I was never really like that excited about them. I'm not really sure why I bought them in the first place. Maybe just because I had seen them somewhere else. They were okay. I just didn't really like the color. And these were much, much better. I was absolutely in love with these. And you can see, obviously I pulled that wrap. The wrap wasn't on there for that long. And I finally just said to myself, I'm just gonna wrap the car red. I want the car red. It needs to be red. Here's a picture of my Dalmatian sitting on the wheels as a puppy. This photo is probably actually 11 years old now because she's 11. So I had owned the car for 3 or 4 years at this point, and had just been driving it as an automatic, and yeah, she's getting pretty old. She's still alive. That's nice. But the car got wrapped red. Finally the car got wrapped red. I had the sickest wheels on it. I would go out with my buddies and drift, and finally I felt like I was included in everything, and I was like one of the drifter kids and had a cool car. Finally achieved that. So that made me really happy. It was still a crappy automatic, but I finally felt like I had something cool, and I really started to fit in with the community and wasn't just like the video guy. 15-year-old kids were hitting me up everywhere on Instagram, wanting a photo of the car, doing tons of photo shoots, which is extremely time consuming. I became not a fan of and started telling people no, because it used to just drive me insane driving around town all day. The car slowly just kept coming together. Getting the wide body on was really cool. I don't think I have any photos of that, but here's one of the first photos of the car with the wide body on it, and that was really cool. The wheels kind of tucked finally, and the thing was just looking pretty sick. You know, I never really understood what's up with these Zenki hoods though, how they never really seem to fit very well, but the car was dope, and it was low. The guy that owned the car before, my friend Tyler, his name was Zach, and he basically just bought a set of like Power by Max coilovers and put them at the lowest setting, and Tyler and I never changed them the entire time that he owned the car and I owned the car. I just left the thing slammed because I love slammed cars. Absolutely a huge fan of slammed cars. So then, no, I did not get in a car accident. My friend Emerson, who I mentioned at the beginning of the video, here's his car again. A friend of ours gave him these headlights and this hood off of a Kouki. These headlights were trashed. The hood was trashed. You can see in the middle here, it looks like it's kind of cracked, like pretty far up. The guy that gave Emerson this hood had accidentally driven his S14 under a semi-truck trailer while we were out drifting, and the kickstand of the semi-truck trailer went straight through the middle of the hood right there, pretty much just tacoed the core support, practically hitting the engine, I think. So this nasty-ass carbon fiber hood had been repaired by Emerson, and he did an okay job, surprisingly, for how bad it was, but pretty incredible that we kept this thing around and managed to, fix it. So I put the Kouki headlights on the car, kind of slapped this hood on there. I took a photo in the back of my condo where I lived and did a little bit of photoshopping to make it look nice, but this is kind of the direction I was trying to go in, and I'm never a huge fan of exposed carbon, so I was perfectly happy to kind of Bondo this hood and get it worked in, and I ended up wrapping the whole thing red. And then I bought a hood vent to cover up a lot of that damage that was there, because it was definitely imperfect, the repair job that I had done on top of Emerson's repair job. But the car was looking pretty sick, and this is something that no one had ever done before, was keep the Zenki corner markers, fenders, and bumper and put the Kouki hood and Kouki headlights on. And I still get, messages to this day about how I did it, and I have to tell people that you gotta pretty much cut the crap out of the hood because the Zenki fenders are about an inch narrower than a Kouki fender, and I had to cut an inch off of both sides. So Doing this on a metal hood probably wouldn't work as good because, you know, metal hoods are usually a pressed piece of steel which might split apart. So having that crummy beat up carbon fiber hood that allowed me to cut into this thing and just not really care. Also, you can see too, the Kouki hood's about 1 inch too long, and so it was like coming over the headlights. But getting that sorted out slowly over time, and you can start to see the front end looking a little bit better, a little bit better. Yeah, my friend Kyron flew down to Portland and did a photo shoot with me. You can see him in the back of my dad's Mini Cooper. Some cool shots from there, you know, me pretending to be a drifter, just barely getting the thing to drift for like 2 seconds. Looked really cool. The shoot ended up going on Speed Hunters, which is really sick. I was definitely humbled by that. You know, it's a pretty cool thing, but I'm still rocking the automatic KA, so I'm a little bit embarrassed that I got kind of a cool car, but it's kind of, you know, fake. It's got dual cam KA in it, and it even got used as the thumbnail for Donut Media's Up to Speed on the Nissan Silvia. So this is up to speed on my 240SX, by the way. I actually worked at Donut Media as a freelance filmmaker for probably 3 or 4 years. They had my full permission and Chiron's permission to use this thumbnail, and I'm actually pretty good friends with James Pumphrey and Jesse. I'm sure you guys have heard of Speed, but those guys are good friends of mine, and I'll probably do a collab with them at some point. I'll have to hit those dudes up, but whenever I'm in LA, I try to visit. This is kind of a special photo because this is not my S14. This is my buddy Sam's S14, and I went down to LA for 2 weeks and shot a video with him and Chris Forsberg and Ryan Turek called Drift Garage. And if you know anything about grassroots drifting, you should probably go see Drift Garage. Basically, these guys would take cars, they would order, you know, $20,000, $30,000 worth of parts, and we would spend 2 weeks just filming them, taking a car from being practically stock and fixing it up. We took Sam, Drift Idiot is his YouTube handle. If you haven't seen Drift Idiot as well, it's kind of a goofy thing, kind of similar to what I do in the garage, but he built this S14, blew the motor, we rebuilt it, put it on new wheels, got the thing dialed, and we went to Apex I and had the thing tuned. It made about 300 horsepower. But this is important because it really lit a fire under my ass to get my car some kind of cool new engine. And I actually already had that engine sitting in the garage for about 3 years. And I forgot to mention, but you're probably wondering where those work equips went. Well, I traded those work equips to my buddy Thompson, who had this pretty much built SR that had been sitting in his garage for years. And so I now had this built SR sitting in my garage. I think it's got like Weisco pistons and JE rods, whatever. This was a really nice SR. I wanted to go 2J, but I pretty much got this thing for like 1,800 bucks because that's what I got the work equips for. Bought myself some cams. My buddy Tommy helped me out with a bunch of parts. ISR Performance helped me out with a bunch of parts. So I slowly, very slowly over the years got this thing sort of dialed. There was a lot of stuff missing. Thompson wanted to do a big turbo on the car, like a GT35 with a sumpless setup, and that's not what I wanted. So everything was missing. The turbo was missing, the exhaust manifold, the oil pickup, the oil pan, all that stuff was missing. There was like rockers missing and shims missing. So it was a pain in the butt getting this thing put together, but I finally did it. And this actually kind of started the trend of me working really hard all summer in my filmmaking career and then kind of just taking like the entire winter off and working on one project like really well focused in the garage. And this is fine. It's finally kind of how this all came to fruition was I finally just put my foot down and I'm like, I'm gonna finish putting this SR together. And I did a couple of other fun bits, bash bars and new brakes on the car. So getting that KA out was so exciting. I got that thing pulled out all by myself. My buddy Alex let me borrow his engine lift, and it was pretty nasty. At this point, the car was like barely running because I was having tons of MAF issues and some like wire problems, and the thing would just throw fits and leave me stranded every once in a while, which is not fun. So I gave it to a friend of mine who immediately turned the thing over and sold it for like 300 bucks, and I feel like that was kind of a dick move. But anyways, at least he took it out of my hands. Got the SR there ready to go in my cute little garage here out there, and I decided that I would do kind of like some tubbed fenders, which turned out pretty good. They still look the same. I painted it East Coast gray is what we call this. Ryan Turk coined the term. Him and Forsberg always paint everything East Coast gray. Here we go, the very first start. It was like 2 in the morning and my wife was upstairs sleeping and she was pregnant with our first kid at the time. And that thing just fired off on the stock ECU with no math. Totally blew my mind. I was inside out. It was one of the most exciting car moments in my life when that SR first started after putting the whole thing in. After rebuilding the whole entire thing by myself, putting the whole thing in by myself, I was pretty freaking proud of myself, to be honest. And I got these gauges working. That's a lot of oil pressure. That's great. 70 pounds of oil pressure. It needed intercooler piping. I ended up bringing it to a friend of mine named Robbie, who is a TIG welder, and he does a lot of little side things for me, TIG welding anything on the car. So at this point, the car is like barely running because it's just open turbo, and I had plans to do standalone. So I wanted Power FC forever, just never got around to buying it, and ended up moving out of our house into the new house, as you can see here, with the 4-post lift. So we got that 4-post lift in there, and we barely got the 240 up on the lift because it's so insanely low. It couldn't make, this arch that the lift makes when you have to drive up onto it. So I've got the front coilovers like spun as far up as they could possibly go. Car was just, here's what it looked like, years before, just insanely low. It was tucking a rear wheel and it would scrape on everything, but I loved that. I'm a stance kid at heart, so what would be better than some air ride? So I found some relatively affordable air ride for my 240SX and threw it on there, and everything was, peachy after that. Could get the car up on the lift, no problem. I could air the car out and it could be lower than it's ever been before. And yeah, you can see there it's pretty slammed with the E30 up on top. Yeah, it was going great. Got the Link ECU from my friend Jason, who is actually I think he's the CEO of Link ECU North America. Hooked me up with that, so a huge shout out to Jason, good longtime friend of mine who owned a shop out here in Portland called PSI, where they did crazy amounts of things. He was actually one of the big parts that kept Ryan Turk's program going back in the day when he first got that FRS. So spent the morning out here with my dad getting the ECU installed and firing the car up. So excited to get my SR going. My friend Brian Hartsock came over, got a few wiring issues handled. He's actually Ryan Turk's crew chief. So got a little network of friends here that are constantly helping me fix some of this stuff. So brought it to the dyno. Jason tuned this thing. I was pretty excited about it. It made, let's see, well, it wasn't until the second dyno session I needed a new fuel pump, but it ended up making 350 at the wheel on like 16 or 17 PSI. And the thing is sick. I gotta be honest, like, it's one of the best running cars I have ever owned. And it's fully on standalone, fully custom engine, everything, like wire tuck, open turbo. I've never had a car run this good. So huge shout out to Link ECU for having, such an incredible platform to be able to make all this stuff work. But yeah, it started misfiring because I couldn't get enough gas. But anyways, the Link ECU works with like so many of the stock parts of the SR, like the idle control and all that is really nice, and I'm sure a lot of other ones do that too. But I ended up getting this cam trigger system because these crappy SR cam triggers are so bad, the stock ones. And that was actually what was causing the misfire, is it couldn't keep up, with the RPM. So popped that thing off, got this digital cam trigger, which is so sick. Once again, the car is just happier and happier than ever. Jason told me that if I got a real Garrett turbo and got rid of, the crappy Chinese one, that it would probably spool, 1,000 RPMs faster. I went ahead and did that. I got a Garrett turbocharger. My friend Dylan Hughes got me a deal on that, stuck that thing on there, and the car was absolutely ripping. This car is a freaking handful. I love it. So much fun, such a fun car. Pretty much at this point, the car was handled. It was happy. I was happy. It was fun to drive, but you can see how great it looks in some of these videos, and that's because I'm using a pretty strong filter because the wrap on the car sucked. You can see that red vinyl that I had used, 6-7 years ago was really starting to fade and looking like crap. So I ended up tearing all that off, and it was a major pain in the ass. You can see here's the roll of new vinyl on the top. That sucked because I didn't use automotive vinyl. I used sign vinyl, and it was super cheap. It was basically turning pink, but it was really, really hard to get off the car. It took days to get this crap off the car. Finally got all that off. Thank God that's over. Made some repairs on the bumpers, you know. My friends would always ask me, why do you vinyl your cars? Why don't you just have them painted? And it makes a lot of sense for a car like this, a drift car with fiberglass and stuff, because if you ever smash the bumper or whatever, hit something, you can pretty easily just fix the fiberglass. You keep your roll of extra vinyl in the corner, and then you just rewrap that thing, and it's matching. Don't have to worry about fading the paint, whatever, doing all the crazy paint stuff. So the car is looking better and better every single day. Just enjoying it at this point, driving it around, trying to figure out little things. You can see the headlight placement is kind of messed up in this photo. The headlights and the corner markers just never wanted to line up great, being that it was from a late model and an early model mix, but I always felt like I was doing something to try to get those things fixed. Also kind of drove me crazy. I didn't have a gas door on the car for years. Finally, I ended up figuring that out. My buddy Robbie, the guy that did my intercooler piping, he ended up making a nice, vibrant exhaust for me that sounds incredible. Such a good sounding exhaust and is a perfect fit with the SR. The car was just super happy. Everything was fresh and clean, you know, the engine bay. I've got these gold BBSs on my E30 because that car used to have some chrome ones. And I always wanted some BBSs on the 240, you know, just to see like what would happen. So I took my silver, chrome-ish silver BBSs that had just been sitting for a while, because what I had done, I had bought another set of BBSs and had them re-drilled to be the proper lug pattern for my E30, because 4x100 BBSs are really hard to find, and face-mounted faces. And that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But I had these silver BBSs that were sitting around, and I decided I'd order some triple step 18-inch lips for them. So excited about that. Got these things all put together. The rear lips are 6.5s, and they're insanely wide, you can see in this photo. But everything was coming along, fitting pretty good on that. And finally got that thing looking sick. So here's one of the first videos I shot afterwards. And this is at the point where the car is looking so incredible, but I was starting to just get bored of it. You always get that itch to do more and more and more stuff. It never ends. You can see I've got these little canard things on the front bumper, and they're in the rear as well right here. I just never, it's a car guy thing. You're never satisfied with it. The car had lots of little things, like I had the body kit for almost 10 years at this point. I had the seats for years at this point, the crappy fake brides I had put on the car. The front end fitment was barely making it, looks good in some photos, looked crappy in person. So finally, this is the final video that I took of it before I decided to tear it all apart and start with version 3, which is where the car is now. So I ended up basically tearing the whole car apart, the new body kit. I resprayed a bunch of stuff on the interior, new hood, new fenders, everything, wide body, all that stuff. So that's where the car sits now in phase 3, and it's pretty close to being done. I'm going to be wrapping and fitting up the front and rear bumpers probably next week, but I needed to take a mental break from all of it. I got pretty busy with some work stuff as well, and it's just about there. So I really appreciate all of you sticking around and watching this build series. I think it's like 16 episodes now, and the car is coming along. It's really close. I just needed a little bit of a break from it this week, but I didn't want to leave everyone empty-handed. So that is the craziness of the last 15 years of my S14. And I don't plan on selling this thing anytime soon. It's one hell of a fun car to drive, and it's fun to look at, it's fun to own, so I'll probably be keeping it for a while longer, and who knows what's next on this thing. I'm worried now that after all the time and money I've spent on it, I'll just end up getting bored of it again in a few years and doing something else, but we'll see. Very excited to get this thing finished up, so hopefully in the few weeks to come, you guys will see that, and I'll be driving it around, enjoying it. So thanks for watching. Check your polarizer.